I'm Joe Giglio for NJ Sports Now on this Friday, January the 2nd, as we start the new year here. The New York Jets searching for a new regime. Both a general manager and a head coach, Woody Johnson, along with Ron Wolf, Charlie Casserly, the two advisors he's brought in here, are out on the West Coast, in Seattle, back here, all over the country over the next few days, looking for the next leaders of the Jets. And one name that surfaced a couple days ago, New Year's Eve, we found out the news that Doug Marrone, the head coach up with the Bills, exercised an opt-out clause after a nice year in Buffalo to try to leverage a little more money and maybe some more years out of the Bills. They didn't give it to him, and he left. He's now a coaching free agent and suddenly has become a hot name, especially with the Jets. Now, Marrone used to be a Jets assistant and offensive line coach. He's a Bronx kid, coached up at Syracuse, has ties to the New York Jets, has ties to owner Woody Johnson. You could understand why, and he's a decent coach, understand why the Jets would have some interest. But the idea here that he should be at the top of the list or the Jets should make him a priority here and hire Marrone over or before a general manager is just simply folly. Marrone has had a nice coaching career, a nice rise from being that Jets offensive line coach to becoming an offensive coordinator under Sean Payton with the New Orleans Saints right when that franchise started to rise from the ashes and Drew Brees started to become the quarterback that he eventually became. But Marrone, I mean, you look at him as a head coach when he's moved on and become his own guy, first at Syracuse in college football and then with the Buffalo Bills. Admittedly, not the easiest jobs to win at, so you grade Marrone on a curve. Admittedly, coaching in the Big East, coaching on a team at Syracuse that it's a basketball school, not a football school, and then in the AFC East with the Bills, who really haven't been a playoff team since the 90s. Not easy places to coach. And if you want to say Marrone's 500 record at Syracuse and his almost 500 record in a couple years in Buffalo looks a little better than it actually is, I'll buy that. But I'm not going to sit here and buy that Doug Marrone is a great coach or that Doug Marrone is a market upgrade over what the Jets just gave away in Rex Ryan. And to me, that's the baseline here. If the Jets are going to go out and make a splash, if the Jets are going to go out and find a head coach, they have to find a great head coach. Because if you look at Rex Ryan's resume, while it was, littered with his flaws, and while it was littered with the last 4 years, there's no way anyone could convince me Rex Ryan wasn't at least a decent to good head coach. You don't go to back-to-back AFC championship games with a minus at quarterback, which was Mark Sanchez in those first 2 years. You don't do that without being at least a decent head coach. Rex had his flaws, but Rex could do two things: coach defense and motivate his players. And that got the Jets pretty far for a couple years. All I've seen out of Doug Marrone in terms of actually completing results on the field is a losing record inside the old Big East when he was at Syracuse, and now with the Buffalo Bills, playing decent football. And really for an offensive guy, and think about this, Rex was a defensive guy. His defenses usually stood up. For Marrone, up in Buffalo, he's an offensive guy. That's his background. That's his expertise. His defense, that defensive line there in Buffalo the last couple of years, specifically this past year, carried that football team. Meanwhile, his offense and a quarterback drafted in the first round in E.J. Manuel never developed, never got going. When I look at Doug Marrone, I see a decent prospect. I see a guy that another team should take a chance on, and he probably has some upside here as a head coach. But the idea that the Jets should make him their number one priority or possibly as early as next week hire Doug Marrone without already having a GM in place who wants him as the head coach, it's ridiculous. When I look at Doug Marrone, I see a decent coach. I see a guy the Jets should have some interest in, considering his background with them and in the New York area. But I do not see an upgrade over Rex Ryan. And if the Jets walk out of this hiring period with a head coach before a GM, and that head coach is not an improvement on Rex Ryan, once again, Woody Johnson will have just messed this entire thing up. I'm Joe Giglio for NJ Sports.